Welcome to the Mormon News Roundup, your go-to source for the latest headlines and critical analysis on all things LDS.
Breaking news.
Join D-Vase,
Mormon News Roundup.
that's talent on loan from Kolob, every Sunday and Monday night.
We will uncover the truth behind the news that matters most to the Mormon community.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And you might notice that our interface looks a little bit different, and that is because we are joined today with a very special guest. Why don't you let yourself into the studio? It's the Mormon News Roundup. Woo!
The prophetic party planner.
That's right.
Exactly
That's right.
That's
How do you
it.
like my background here, guys? I've got the President Nelson 100th birthday party fever going on right now.
Yeah, we do too. And I think it looks like you have 100 balloons there. Landon has a party hat. I've got a party hat. We also have cake. We didn't light the candles because we figure 100 candles will burn down our studios collectively, but we are celebrating.
That looks good. What about you, Landon?
Oh, I never pass on cake. So any excuse, even President Nelson's 100th, that works for me if I get cake.
You guys are really getting into this President Nelson spirit, I can tell.
You know what? Any excuse for a party. And we just love this idea for an episode. This is all DeVase's idea, but to celebrate, this is right around President Nelson's birthday week. And he's going to turn 100 years old and have a live broadcast. We are going to be talking about 50, not 100, half of 100, 50 top 50 most cringeworthy moments in Mormon history, with the subtitle, What Were They Thinking? So I think this is an absolutely perfect way to celebrate. And we're so happy that DeVase brought this onto our show. So I think you guys are going to love this.
That's like the number of missions that President Nelson could have gone on had he gone on a mission at all.
Right, he didn't go on a mission.
Now, Rebecca, weren't you going to sing a song for President Nelson?
God. I was kidding.
A Marilyn
I've
Monroe
never really...
version or something like that?
No, behind the scenes, I was joking about, doing happy birthday, but I'm not going to do it. Mr. President Nelson, but that would be really inappropriate, so I'm not going to do it.
Well, some like it hot. You know what they say? Some like it hot.
That's exactly right.
I've read that somewhere. So this is what we're doing here, folks. Let's delve into the most unforgettable and awkward moments from Mormon history in this eye-opening episode, from controversial statements and questionable teachings to bizarre public appearances. We count down the top 50 cringeworthy moments caught on tape. And that's the caveat here, guys, is it has to be something that's caught on tape. So obviously we're not going to be going to the Journal of Discourses for this one, right?
Wow, that would be way more than 50.
Yeah, it certainly would. And
so that means we're only looking at, pretty modern prophets, ridiculous sayings, not older prophets.
That's right. And he has to be caught on tape here. So here's some of the highlights. We'll talk about Neil L. Andersen and his unusual defense of Joseph Smith. Brad Wilcox is going to make the list quite a few times. Jeffrey Holland and his fiery rants and inconsistent messages. David Bednar, Susan's husband, will be in the top 50. And Russell M. Nelson has some peculiar moments and questionable teachings. And there's going to be some moments of confusion and missteps from church leaders. And I'll just put a caveat in here that these 50 are not in any particular order. They're just 50 cringeworthy moments, although the number one is a pretty good moment. Any questions here, guys, before we hop in?
I think we just dive right in, and we should say that Landon and I have not seen these yet, so our reactions will be raw and unplanned.
As opposed to your normal reactions, right? I think you guys are pretty raw all the time.
Which are also raw and unplanned. You're right.
Right. I think so. This is going to be unforgettable instances that have left many people scratching their heads. And while you're out there, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this on the Mormonish platform. Let's start here with Neil L. Andersen. Let's give Brother Joseph a break.
For example, the questions concerning the prophet Joseph Smith are not new. They have been hurled by his critics since this work began. To those of faith who, looking through the colored glasses of the 21st century, honestly question events or statements of the prophet Joseph from nearly 200 years ago, may I share some friendly advice? For now, give Brother Joseph a break.
Landon, do we need to give Brother Joseph a break? Because people just been way too hard on this guy, haven't they?
Well, it was 200 years ago. So, I think in this same vein, we have to give Jesus a break. We can't expect him to be perfect because he lived 1,000 years ago.
What about you, Rebecca?
I don't know. Whenever I hear that song comes to mind, give him a break, break him off.
That
Seriously.
Kit Kat bar.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, but we're going to bring this fast and furious. What about Bonnie Cordon? Her grandson's homicide increased her testimony somehow. Let's hear about this cringeworthy moment in Mormon history.
An unexpected situation happened where our grandson was all of a sudden stopped breathing, and we lost him. After spending 3 days in a children's hospital with him, our hearts were very tender. As we returned back to Salt Lake, I realized that I had an assignment at the primary children's hospital. And my heart was so tender and raw, I just knew I couldn't do it. So I got on my knees and I said, Heavenly Father, I can't accept this assignment. It's just too hard. But the nudge and the prompting said, just go.
Guys, there's nothing like a homicide to build a testimony. Don't you think, Rebecca?
No, this whole story I don't like at all. It's unfortunate. There's way more to the circumstance of her grandson's death. She had just spent the previous, 2 days in an interrogation room because he died under very mysterious circumstances in his parents' room, her son and daughter-in-law. And so for her to try to use that and spin that when it's just so questionable, nobody really knows what happens. And I will say, you can hear that little tell in her voice. She goes, he stopped, we lost him. You know what I mean? There was just a little, she doesn't quite have it down in her mind how to explain it, but she definitely used it as part of the faith promoting story. So it's a really sad scenario.
Well, what do you think, Landon? How big on the cringe meter is this story about her grandson's homicide in which her entire family was implicated and now using that as a faith promoting story?
I'm surprised you have it as 49 because I'd have it right up near number 1, especially if you actually heard the recording of her. She was clearly defending her family and trying to not cooperate with the police in the investigation. So this was a very sad story.
Yeah, this is absolutely peak cringe, but we're going to move right along here. Boyd Packer, 1976 priesthood session, 2 young men only. This was eventually redacted and tried to wipe. They made a pamphlet out of this, but they tried to wipe it out of history. But luckily for us, Kulch made a parody video on this very bizarre talk that has become part of Mormon legend.
When this power begins to form, it might be likened to having a little factory in your body, one designed to produce that substance that can generate life. This little factory moves quietly into operation as a normal and expected pattern of growth and begins to produce that life-giving substance. It will do so perhaps as long as you live. It works very slowly. That is the way it should be. For the most part, unless you tamper with it, you will hardly be aware that it is working at all. As you move closer to manhood, this little factory will sometimes produce an oversupply of this substance. The Lord has provided a way for that to be released. It will happen without any help, nor without any resistance from you. Perhaps one night you will have a dream, and in the course of it, the release valve that controls that little factory will open and release all that is excess. The factory and the automatic release valve works on its own schedule. The Lord intended it to be that way. It is to regulate itself. This will not happen very often. You may go a long period of time, and there will be no need for this to occur. When it does, you should not feel guilty. It is the nature of young manhood and is part of becoming a man. There is, however, something you should not do. Sometimes a young man does not understand. Perhaps he is encouraged by unwise or unworthy companions to tamper with that factory. He might fondle himself and open that release valve. This you should not do. For if you do, that little factory will speed up, and you will be tempted to tamper with it again and again. You can quickly be subjected to a habit, one that is not worthy, one that will leave you feeling depressed and guilty. Resist that temptation. Do not be guilty of tampering or playing with this sacred power of creation.
Quit playing with your dinghy.
Keep it in reserve for the time that it can be righteously employed.
Landon, is this absolute peak cringe here with the little factory talk?
I don't know any young man who wants to refer to it as a little factory. They want to say it's the U.S. Military industrial complex down there. But definitely.
What about you, Rebecca? What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is just so unreal. We have a friend, Dr. Darrell Ray, who runs the Recovering from Religion Association, and he wrote a book called Sex and God, How Religion Destroys Sexuality. And somebody sent him this talk. He thought it was a joke. He thought it was not real. Once he figured out it was real, he devoted an entire chapter of his book to this talk alone and all the problems with it. Extremely problematic on all levels.
Yeah, the unfortunate part about this talk is he goes on later to joke around about hitting homosexuals in this particular talk. This was really one of the most cringeworthy talks in Mormon history, which is why it makes our top 10 list. But we can top that one as well. We have Hartman Rector Jr.'s April 18, 1981 General Conference. Homosexuality is a disease and an acquired addiction. Let's hear from Hartman Rector.
If children have a happy family experience, they will not want to be homosexuals, which I am sure is an acquired addiction, just as drugs, alcohol, and pornography are. The promoters of homosexuality say they were born that way, but I do not believe this is true. There are no female spirits trapped in male bodies and vice versa. He who made them male and female. Every form of homosexuality is sin, said the living prophet Spencer W. Kimball.
Now, they edited, Landon, a bunch of this out of the General Conference. They took it off, but the original version is still there. Landon, is homosexuality an acquired addiction, like a disease like smoking?
I think science has proven otherwise, and I think the church has even come around to the side of science, or at least that's what they say. So it seems like what he's saying has been debunked by his own faith.
Yeah, Rebecca, he got in a lot of trouble for this particular talk. It was even picked up, I believe, by the New York Times, and he had to have an interview over it, but he doubled down on it, and he said, well, I may have been inarticulate, but what I said was true. I mean, this is an incredibly cringeworthy talk.
Yeah, I feel like this talk is the reason we have the more recent statement, much like classic cars and vintage comic books, words do not age well. It's this kind of talk and this kind of statement that they're trying to get us to forget. However, shows like yours and ours, I guess, will never let it die.
Okay, now this one, we got to talk over this one. Otherwise, we're going to get a copyright strike on here. Okay. Rebecca, what is the Hosanna Shout? This is the mega compilation of Hosanna Shout.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be a very super special, amazing shout. It was done in the Kirtland Temple. As we understand there, it was absolutely raucous with, shouting and stomping and fervor. When a temple's dedicated, you do this. But today when we've seen it, it's kind of lackluster, like somebody just waving a Kleenex after they blew their nose. It's not exactly, I think, what it was meant to be, and a little bit disappointing. Wouldn't you say, Landon? I think you have a story about that, having looked forward to participating, and then it was just kind of like, nah.
Oh, I always heard about the Hosanna Shout. I thought it might be like the rebel yell, in the Civil War. So I was like, everyone's always so proud of it, and that's how they, dedicate the temple and everything. And then I saw old Left Shark Oaks up there doing that, and it was just like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
I think the people who are not at all familiar with Mormonism look at this as one of the most bizarre worship practices in the church. And that is saying something considering what happens inside of the temple. The Hosanna Shout is certainly one of the most weird rituals that the church has. Don't you think? This is absolutely peak cringe. I think we can say that for a certainty, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's like, I think even faithful Mormons know it's a little cringy. That time where they did it during conference, they wanted everybody to do it, Left Shark Oaks. And a lot of people didn't mention it or post about it, even though they posted everything else about that conference weekend. I think everybody kind of knows this is just not a good look.
That's not the weekend to invite your neighbor over to view conference.
No.
No. And our next one here is, again, we're going to talk over this one. This was our recent general conference where all of the senior leaders of the church were all in wheelchairs because they're all over 90 years old. They are so old. And, I hate to make a joke about this, but is the older that they get, is that the bigger your testimony? I mean, if we wheeled these guys in on gurneys where they had to literally be like strapped down to hospital beds, is that even more inspiring? Is this inspirational to see people who should really be at home with their families rather than figuring out how to hoard the widow's mite and take away gay rights? They're wheeled out in public so that they can barely even stand up. Is this peak cringe, or is this hate watching? What do you think here, Landon?
I think they look like a cool motorcycle gang.
What about you, Rebecca?
I think at least they're being authentic there, because in the recent past, we've had President Nelson kind of Photoshop that he's not in a wheelchair. You know, they're kind of trying to pretend that these things aren't happening. At least they're showing that they're aging, and that's okay. People age, we all age. But again, there is that sense that shouldn't somebody of that extreme age just be able to have a little bit of rest in their life? Honestly, is it elder abuse? I've heard that before.
Okay, next up here is President Thomas Monson and his famous wiggling the ears trick. This is a legendary General Conference talk.
An experience I had some years ago while attending a state conference. During the general session, I observed a young boy sitting with his family on the front row of the stake center. I was seated on the stand. As the meeting progressed, I began to notice that if I crossed one leg over the other, the young boy would do the same thing. If I reversed the motion and crossed the other leg, he would follow suit. I would put my hands in my lap, and he would do the same. I rested my chin in my hand, and he also did so. Whatever I did, he would imitate my actions. This continued until the time approached for me to address the congregation. I decided to put him to the test. I looked squarely at him, certain I had his attention, and then I wiggled my ears.
He seems awfully proud of that, doesn't he, Rebecca?
Yeah, he does. I mean, we do know that prophets have special powers and abilities. I just didn't know that it included ear wiggling. I'm impressed.
Well, what do you think about that one, Landon?
I like this. I think this is back in the day when you could have fun. I think nowadays that they're not at that point. I can take spaghetti and push it up my nose and bring it out and floss my brain. I ought to do that in General Conference.
Well, that could make our top cringe list because those are closely related. Now, here's one of my favorites out here, Legrand Richards, who's kind of a legendary General Conference speaker. One of my favorites, actually. And in 1978, he had the red button in General Conference, and this is an amusing take here, but it's definitely cringe.
You can't buy that kind of feeling in the hearts of young people with money. The Lord who creates the feelings of the human breast is the only one who can put that kind of faith into the hearts of his people. Is this red now? Is my turn to quit? I think they got the red button on here, and I mustn't indulge on the other man's time.
You know, you get a lot of cringe moments here when you get these 100-year-old guys out there, and this is just one of many. It's like shooting fish in a barrel.
I like the laughter from the audience, though, because they're just dying for something to happen, and you've just got that conference laugh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next up, Wendy Nelson, January 2016, secret Jesus Earth meetings. Wendy, tell us what's going on with Jesus.
What if you learned that the Savior had already returned to this earth? That he, as part of his second coming, had already met with some of his true followers in several marvelous large gatherings. Gatherings about which the world, including CNN and the blogosphere, knew nothing. If you found out that the Savior was already on the earth, what would you desperately want to do today? And what would you be willing and ready to do tomorrow? I pray that this year you will have some moments of anguishing desperation that will propel you further along the path to becoming the man or woman you were born to be.
Whoa, Landon, secret Jesus meetings? Man, why don't they just take a camcorder and make the most viral video of all time? What do you think?
She made it sound like it's already happened, but if these men are witnesses for Jesus Christ, you think they'd witness to us that Jesus Christ was here, but never heard such a thing. And I'm not sure, Wendy Nelson, she's a general authority. What What's she speaking in what capacity?
She's the prophet's wife, of course, but that's definitely, in my opinion, peak cringe to say, well, we've got secret information for you. What if? What if she won't come out and say that it's happened, but instead she wants to insinuate, what if all of this happened? Well, Wendy, would you just tell us whether it has or not? And better yet, provide some evidence instead of just making these baseless speculations. Is this peak cringe? What do you think, Rebecca?
No, this is irresponsible dog whistling, and I'll tell you why. I have been in rooms with friends who are preppers with white tents, and they believe that Jesus is already here. They believe that he's talking to the 12. They look for signals in conference. They look for signals in the words that they say. This kind of rhetoric from Wendy just fuels their ideas and their more extreme beliefs. It's irresponsible.
Got it. Okay, number 41, Ezra Benson, 1989. He sings I'm a Mormon Boy. I couldn't get the video on this, only the audio, but this is a legend. Once again, another legendary General Conference address.
Kind friends, as here I stand to sing, so very queer I feel, that now I've made my bow, I fear I don't look quite genteel. But never mind, for I'm a boy that's always full of joy, a rough and ready sort of chap, an honest Mormon boy.
Rebecca, it's a pretty good singer there for being how old he is.
I was going to say, it's a charming song. We just need to update. I'm an honest Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints boy. Just update it.
That was
not quite as catchy, is it?
Yeah.
Clearly a victory for Satan, that song was.
Yeah, that's definitely bad
Kind
news.
friends, as here I
It's better
stand.
with Nelson. When you see Nelson, if I could have seen the look on Nelson's face when he was watching that, because he was called into the apostleship in 1984, he must have just been furious just listening to President Benson sing that song. What do you think?
Because he had already given his talk, right, about not using the word Mormon anymore. Is
Well,
that
we
correct
don't-
at that point?
It's
No, I
burned his britches since time immemorial. When he
Right,
was
that's what
in
I
the
mean. He's given-
pre-existence,
Yeah.
it still chapped him when anybody would refer to anyone as a Mormon in the pre-existence. This has gotten his goat for a long time. So yeah, it's a bad deal. There's no doubt about that. Now, one of my here's the next one. N. Eldon Tanner, better clean dead than alive unclean. And N. Eldon Tanner, in my opinion, has the dubious distinction of being, in my opinion, the absolute most boring general authority apostle of all time. And that is a distinction, in my opinion, that it really takes a lot of effort. So I had to chop this up quite a bit to edit it. But let's hear Marion G. Romney, Trust in the Lord, where he says that you should be killed as a missionary rather than, quote unquote, give up your virtue.
Fail.
Marion Romney's April 1979 talk entitled Trust in the Lord is infamous for the phrase, better dead clean than alive unclean. This disturbing message suggests that it's better to die than to live with perceived sexual sin, putting undue psychological pressure on members. It values supposed Mormon cleanliness over a person's actual life.
You will recall, of course, Alma's teaching his son Corianton that unchastity is the most serious offense there is in the sight of God, save murder only. Some years ago, the first presidency said to the youth of the church, better dead clean than alive unclean. I remember how my father impressed the seriousness of unchastity upon my mind. He and I were standing in the railroad station in Rexburg, Idaho. We heard the train whistle and knew that in 3 minutes I would be on my way to Australia to fill a mission. My son, you are going a long way from home, but your mother and I, your brother and sisters, will be with you constantly in our thoughts and prayers. We shall rejoice with you in your successes, and we shall sorrow with you in your disappointment. When you are released and return, we shall be glad to greet you and welcome you back into the family circle. But remember this, my son, we would rather come to this station and take your body off the train in a casket than to have you come home unclean, having lost your virtue.
Screw that guy. I hated him.
Okay, Landon, you're a return missionary. Did you ever hear that kind of a sentiment where it would be better if you died on your mission rather than having messed up in some way?
Oh, that was the mantra on my mission. Nobody came home back in the 80s because of this very sentiment. If you came home, I knew guys with mental issues who stayed out no matter what, because to come home from your mission was such a stain on your family that you just didn't do it.
Yeah, in fact, he says in that particular thing that we'd be glad to welcome you back in the family so long as you complete your mission and that you don't mess up. Rebecca, I know that you've got some sons who've returned missionaries. Is this a concept that's been retired, or is it still out there?
I feel like it is still out there. It's called conditional love.
Yeah.
And it's out there in every single way. We love you and it's awesome as long as you're doing what's right. But don't you dare show your face if you're not. I think more and more parents are seeing how harmful that is. But I actually feel sorry for him if that is what his parents said to him, because they didn't love him. They only loved him if he towed the party line. And it's very sad. It maybe explain why a lot of these officials in the church are the way they are. It's really sad.
Yeah, and it's echoed not just by an elder in town. There's been a number of people who have echoed that address. That's far from a one-off. It was very common back in the 60s, 70s, and even up, like you said, Landon, up until the 80s. Hopefully, it's not quite as common now. Now, number 39, when the prophet speaks, folks, the thinking has been done. But some people say that the church actually never taught that. Let's see what the truth is.
There are many members of the church who have this mindset that when the prophet speaks, the debate is over and you should just not think about it. And that's not right. I think that is cultish. But that is not what the church has taught over time.
Roll the tape.
When the prophet speaks, sisters, the debate is over.
N. Eldon Tanner echoed her sentiments in the August 1979 Ensign, and it's not just a throwback to the 70s. Here it is at a BYU devotional from 2011.
My dear wife, Ann, introduced a motto for our family, which she has continually taught our children and occasionally has had to remind me that when the prophet speaks, the debate is over.
It's also an attitude that students are encouraged to adopt in the Presidents of the Church Institute manual. And it was brought up as recently as 2023 as the motto by which Elder and Sister Suarez live their lives. So yeah, I'd say that is what the church has taught over time. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, this is one of the most incredibly harmful takes, in my opinion. When the prophet speaks, the thinking has been done or the debate is over. That's a high control tactic that is very common among cult leaders. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, this is the kind of thinking that gets people on board with things that their own moral compass is telling them no, like perhaps the November 5th policy, things like that. Your internal compass, your moral code is saying no, but you know that you need to get on board with what the prophet is saying because the debate's over. So you basically gaslight yourself into going along with these things. You see it over and over again. The most recent one was about garments, or actually the garment. It is now called the garment, not garments, or the garment of the holy priesthood. There's an article by President Holland in September, Leahona, where he says, go ahead and pray about the garment and wearing it, but you're not going to get any answer that's different from the prophets. So there it is.
Yeah, Henry Eyring echoed the same type of sentiment. So have a lot of other people. Landon, did you ever hear that growing up where you don't need to use your critical thinking and you should never think, never question, never doubt, but just blindly follow what church leaders say?
Oh, absolutely. I heard all those talks. I know that saying very well. Very dangerous. I can't think of anything more cultish than regardless of what you think, it doesn't matter. You listen to what this person says, even if you disagree with them.
Yeah, and Timber, who is an active member of the church, by the way, actually echoed and said that that was cultish. I agree with him, and I agree with you. Now, next up, we have Kevin Hamilton, the former president of BYU, who gives a very bizarre take on why a church, and he talks about how the church and Jesus are actually synonymous, and it's peak cringe.
As I visit with members across the church, I sometimes hear things like, I don't support the church's policy on, and then you fill in the blank. Or, I don't agree with the way the church does this or that. Could I suggest an alternative approach? Substitute the word Savior or Lord or Jesus Christ in place of the church. As in, I don't support the Savior's policy on, you fill in the blank. Or I don't agree with the way Jesus Christ does this or that. For me, personally, that seems to put a very different perspective on things.
Landon, when you substitute the name of Jesus in for the name of the church, you can get some kind of bizarre takes in that substitution. Are Jesus and the church synonymous? In other words,
well, if I try that what he just said, I could say that the name of the church is the Savior of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So evidently it's the church that saves Jesus and not the other way around.
Yeah, it seems to be a very odd way of positioning things to, in other words, you should never question the church. Once again, we see this message over and over again. You should never question Jesus, never question the church. And if you do, then you're always in the wrong. Rebecca, what's your take on this Pete Cringe one?
Yeah, it's right in line with other ways to make you override your own moral compass. You may think differently, but you need to do what Jesus wants you to do. And that is through the church. Whatever the church wants you to do, Jesus wants you to do it. And if this is true, think about all the things that the church has reversed itself on. Jesus is a flip-flopper, right?
Yeah, and Jesus could be considered a racist or a sexist or a homophobe or in this recent transgender policy. Jesus wants you to have a bathroom monitor. There's the extensions of this are absolutely absurd. Next up here, Elder Alan Haney, April 2023 General Conference. The faith-promoting story of the crushed water bottle. This has crushed water bottle. This has entered the Mormon zeitgeist and is a rather cringeworthy take.
Near the end of the lunch, I was surprised to hear a loud crunching noise. And when I looked up, I saw that President Nelson had stood his plastic water bottle straight up and then flattened it and replaced the lid. President Dallin H. Oaks then asked the question I wanted to ask. President Nelson, why did you flatten your plastic water bottle? He replied, it makes it easier for those who are handling recyclable materials because it doesn't take up as much space in the recycling container. While pondering that response, I heard the same crunching sound again. And I looked to my right, and President Oaks had flattened his plastic water bottle just like President Nelson. And then I heard some noise to my left, and President Eyring was flattening his plastic water bottle, although he had adopted a different strategy by doing it while it was horizontal, which took more effort than with the bottle straight up. And noticing this, President Nelson kindly showed him the bottle straight up technique to more easily flatten the bottle. At that point, I leaned over to President Oaks and I asked, is flattening your plastic water bottle a new recycling requirement of the cafeteria? And President Oaks responded with a smile on his face, well, Alan, you need to follow the prophet.
You should always follow the prophet according to the church's teachings, but some ways to follow the prophet are harder than others because sometimes it's hard to fraudulently and shamefully hoard hundreds of billions of dollars when it comes to following the prophet. That's when it gets really hard. What do you think, Rebecca?
You know, we've really kind of sunk to another level. 2,000 years ago, Jesus is walking on water. Now our prophet is flattening water bottles. Again, have these men never heard of recycling? Although I will say that story is one of the few times I've ever heard anybody from the pulpit talk about caring from the earth or anything with a positive environmental message, which is to recycle. But again, the idea of these grown men looking and saying, he did it, I do it, I do it. It's so disturbing.
Landon, what's your take here?
When the prophet speaks, the debate is over.
Whoa, you saw it right here, folks. You saw it right here. Landon, way to follow the prophet. That's very impressive, Landon. Nice. Okay, we got to keep this train going here because we got 50. Julie Beck, the infamous cup of coffee. If you drink one single drop of coffee, you will not be in heaven.
My next story is about a woman I'll call Mary. She was the daughter of faithful pioneer parents who had sacrificed much for the gospel. She had been married in the temple and was the mother of 10 children. She was a talented woman who taught her children how to pray, to work hard, and to love each other. She paid her tithing, and the family rode to the church together on Sunday in their wagon. Though she knew it was contrary to the word of wisdom, she developed the habit of drinking coffee and kept a coffee pot on the back of her stove. She claimed that the Lord will not keep me out of heaven for a little cup of coffee. But because of that little cup of coffee, she could not qualify for temple recommend, and neither could those of her children who drank coffee with her.
All you need is one drop, Landon, and you are not getting that temple recommend. You will not know the signs and tokens that you need to pass by the angels who stand as sentinels, and you will not be able to gain your eternal exaltation in spite of earth and hell. You know, it's a real bummer.
That's why I eat cake. Much more healthy, and I'm not damned to hell.
That's a good saying. And I know, Rebecca, we reviewed this on the church's very amusing Mormon movie reviews, which dealt with this particular topic. But this is really one of the most viral video clips of all time. It is absolutely peak cringe.
Yeah, no, it is. And unfortunately, it just keeps happening over and over. Exactly what you said in your subtitle. What were they thinking? I feel like, I thought I could make it through all 50 here, but this one makes me want to just tap out. I'm not kidding. That is just ridiculous.
All right. Well, it looks like I'm doing my job then, because I was supposed to find the 50 most cringeworthy moments, and it seems like every single one of them is more juicy than the last. So
too much.
Well, apparently I can see around corners and make you smarter free of charge. Okay, next up, it's getting better and better here. Annette Dennis and the power of LDS women. She's going to talk about how Mormon women are the most empowered women in the entire world. This is going to be fascinating.
There is no other religious organization in the world that I know of that has so broadly given power and authority to women.
Roll the tape.
Tonight we share in the ordination of Stacy D. Cram to be ordained as presiding bishop and counselor to the president of the church and member of the quorum of the first presidency.
But Nemo, she spoke to that.
There are religions that ordain some women to positions such as priests and pastors, but very few relative to the number of women in their congregations receive that authority that their church gives them.
So what she's saying is that the LDS Church gives more authority to women per capita than any other religion, if not the same kind of authority that other religions do. Well, Community of Christ have been ordaining women at the local level as deacons, teachers, priests, and so on since 1984. Let me know what you think.
Landon, does the Mormon Church give more power and authority than any other organization in the world to women?
Well, I think we see the oldest women's society in the world run by men in the LDS Church. So they definitely do.
And obviously, Rebecca, this went extremely viral out there. There was a firestorm of backlash on Annette Dennis. What did you think? I know you covered this on the Mormon Newscast.
Yeah, I think a man made her say that. I mean, obviously. And it's interesting because then in the next couple of weeks, she also gave a conference talk on the garment, and they renamed it the Garment of the Holy Priesthood. And now on faithful social media, I see all over the place women saying, I have the priesthood because I have put on the garment of the Holy Priesthood. Two birds with one stone. Yes, you feel empowered. And yes, you're being made to wear your garment, which gives you the priesthood. So well done, whoever came up with that.
Now, this next clip here is from the famous MormonLeaks videos, which were behind the scenes leaked videos of church headquarters. Now, Gordon Smith is actually not a church leader, but he is was a high priest at the time, and he's briefing the Mormon church leaders, and they're going to talk about politics here. And this one in particular really is peak cringe for me, because Gordon Smith is going to say why he voted for the Iraq War, and it is absolutely shocking the reason that he gives.
I know and have been a critic of the Iraq War, but I also admit to you I voted for it because I felt the Lord's hand in it. I hope it works out, but I can promise you this: you'll never send missionaries to the Arab Street until the rule of law exists in Arabia, and it has taken root in Iraq. And ultimately, I think that if that succeeds, there will be an opportunity to begin building the church in the Middle East, which is a deeply troubled place.
Landon, I know that you're a veteran of the armed forces. Should we be voting for wars and using the military-industrial complex because, quote, the Lord's hand was in it, and so that missionaries can hand out copies of the Book of Mormon in the streets of Baghdad?
This scares the hell out of me. To think that leaders are making decisions based on Book of Mormon stories and the words of old men who are trying to get their church out there and be able to grow their church. That just sickens me. That's not why I serve my country, was for that. And so this just really scares me that's happening. And I have employees right now in Iraq, and I can tell you Iraq is not a rule of law. So everything he predicted has not come true. These guys are in a compound right now, can't go outside because of fear of something happening to them.
Yeah, this is one of the most reprehensible clips, in my opinion, of this entire thing, because, you know, what it didn't come to pass. He said he felt the Lord's hand in it, but the missionaries aren't in Iraq. In fact, Iraq and the Middle East are still an incredible mess. And Gordon Smith, you know, his duty was to his oath of office, not to his religion. And he definitely dropped the ball. Rebecca, is this peak cringe?
It's worse than cringe. This is absolutely terrifying, and it has real world consequences. And no, his duty is not to his office. There is more footage of him where he jokingly says, "Oh, my staff and I sit around waiting for that call from Salt Lake to see what we need to do next." This should terrify the hell out of everybody out there and make them think when they're voting. Please think carefully.
Yeah, people talk about why people are still in this space and say, well, why can't you just leave my religion and my church alone? This is exactly why, is because people want to take their Iron Age informed nonsense and use the military industrial complex to try to bring to fruition their faith on other people to, quote, open up Arabia. And this is still really an important topic. So this one is really very important for me personally. Now, speaking of MormonLeaks, we also have Elder Gong here, who was an assistant of the 12 at the time. He was eventually called into the apostleship back in, I think it was about 2020. But here we're going to see behind the scenes here where our favorite apostle, Elder Oaks, is going to obsess about the quote unquote homosexual agenda.
The reason I ask the question is not related to this presentation, but I'm suspicious that the news media cover up anything involving homosexuals when it would work to the disadvantage of the homosexual agenda and so on. And I just wondered if there was some of that in this.
No, Dallin, there's not a quote unquote homosexual agenda. No, there's not media that covers up anything that could be detrimental to homosexuals. And just your basic answer to all of this is no, no, no. We see that homosexuals and gay persons in particular live rent free in Dallin Oaks's mind. And he's really just obsessed over the concept. What do you think about this one, guys?
Yeah, if you watch the rest of it, Elder Gong is informing them, kind of synthesizing the news of the day and giving them information. Almost every name that he brings up, I think I remember he mentioned Mark Zuckerberg, and Elder Oaks goes, "Is he gay?" And then he mentions someone else, and Elder Oaks goes, "Is he gay?" Like everyone, he has to double check because there's this agenda. It's insanity when you pull that curtain back.
This is Elder Oaks on the Gong Show. He ought to get a big gong for that statement.
That's right. You know, Rebecca, he was asking, is Julia Assange gay?
Yes.
Is Chelsea Manning gay?
Yeah.
The Bradley Manning at the time. He's obsessed with the concept. We're trying to brief him about some of the most important things happening in the world with WikiLeaks and things that could affect the church. All he cares about is people's sexuality. The briefing went completely over his head.
Isn't Elder Gong's son gay?
Yes, Elder Gong's son is gay. Matthew
I forgot
Gong
to ask
is gay.
about that, evidently.
Yes, he did.
So,
Yeah, he is gay. He has a very somewhat turbulent relationship with his son, by the way, which is a subject of another conversation. Now we have Russell Ballard in 2017 Q&A. He talks about church's transparency, and he's going to tell us that one of the most opaque organizations in the entire world is actually super transparent.
Just trust us wherever you are in the world, and you share this message with anyone else who raises the question about the church not being transparent. We're as transparent as we know how to be in telling the truth. We have to do that. That's the Lord's way.
Just trust us. We're very, very transparent. That's as transparent as we know how to be. Rebecca, I thought that the church was not transparent at all. What am I missing here?
Hey, you just need to trust them. I have to say, these are getting worse and worse. I'm stress eating cake in between each clip because I can hardly stand it. So
it looks like I'm doing my job, though. I've got the peak cringe absolutely ratcheted up. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Landon, should we be trusting the apostles that they're just doing everything they're supposed to with the church's finances and everything else that's going on? Just trust them and they're transparent about it. What do you think?
Yeah, transparent clone companies that they're making, transparent finances. What are they doing? How are they getting money out of Canada? How are they getting tithing funds tax-free in Australia. The list goes on. And we don't even know how many actual members there are because they won't even open the membership records. But somehow we're supposed to trust them. They won't lead us astray. And the last one, obviously, is the historicity of the Book of Mormon and the church history. They lied to us the entire time until the internet finally brought some light onto it.
Okay, it doesn't look like they're as transparent as they know how to be. That's for sure. And M. Russell Ballard, the late M. Russell Ballard, he's going to make this list twice here with his famous Journal Conference talk in 2016. Where will you go?
If you choose to become inactive or to leave the restored Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where will you go? What will you do?
Whatever I feel like I want to do. Gosh.
So let me put that to you, Rebecca. Where will you go? What will you do?
I think we will all go where we would like to go, right? We're going to go where we want to go. And yeah, that phrase will live in infamy, but I feel like a lot of people who have stepped away from the church, they kind of took that as almost a throwing down the gauntlet. And there's a lot of amazing people who have done a lot of amazing things, a lot of good in the world. And so I think people take that almost as a challenge and say, just why don't you wait and see what I do?
You know, Landon has basically become like an ex-Mormon anthem, and everybody kind of cuts up clips of themselves after they've left the church, and they put them on TikTok, and they start with M. Russell Ballard saying, where will you go? What will you do? Meaning that you're going to lose everything. And they talk about all of the great things that have happened in their life after they left the church. And that's kind of apropos considering that the Mormonish tagline is living a joyful life on the other side of Mormonism.
Yeah, I think I would go save children with Tim Ballard if I left the church.
Oh my gosh.
That is peak Landon right there. That is peak,
it is peak Landon.
Okay. Number 32. Russell Ballard's at it again.
The women of this church, we need you. We need your voices.
Yeah.
They need to be heard.
Yes, sir.
They need to be heard in your community, in your neighborhoods. They need to be heard within the ward council.
Yes.
Or the branch council.
I'm with you.
I don't talk too much in those council meetings.
Wait a minute.
Just straighten the brethren out quickly.
Huh?
And move the work on.
And Dan Lake Joke said this after Sister Reina I. Alberto spoke amongst three men.
Thank you, brethren, for your great messages.
Would you say the church treats women's voices as vital to the kingdom of God? Let me know what you think.
Rebecca, just don't talk. Your voice is really needed in all sorts of ways, but just kind of don't talk too much, if you know what I mean.
She's muted again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
I did that on purpose to make a point. That is what they want. That is absolutely what they want. Yep.
Oh boy, that was perfect. You guys are on this one. We're on the right show for sure.
I know somebody questioned us about our tagline. You mentioned that in the last segment, living a joyful life. They're like, you seem like you're getting more stressed out and angrier.
I don't think so. Okay.
But we're joyful about it. Gosh darn it. We're joyful while we're doing it. Okay.
No one's happier being pissed off than us.
Absolutely. Okay. Next up, Susan's husband. There are no homosexual members of the church. Can that actually be true? That doesn't seem reasonable.
How can homosexual members of the church
¿Cómo pueden los miembros de la iglesia homosexuales
live and remain steadfast in the gospel?
vivir y permanecer fieles en el evangelio?
First, I want to change the question. There are no homosexual members of the church. We are not defined by sexual attraction.
I now speak directly to church members who experience same-sex attraction or identify as gay, lesbian, or bisexual.
How can we help members of the church who struggle with same-gender attractions but want to remain active and fully engaged in the church?
I let them know that I was gay, and that was the first time I had actually said those words and wrote them to someone.
I believe I was made the way I am, all parts of me, by my heavenly parents. They did not mess up when they gave me freckles or when they made me to be gay.
Landon, I don't understand here. David Bednar tells me that there's no gay members of the church. There are no homosexual members of the church. And then Dallin Oaks and a bunch of other church leaders say that there are. In fact, the church on the website used to have an LDS and gay part of the website. I don't understand. What am I missing here?
Well, there are gay members of the church until they find out, and then they excommunicate them, and then there are no more gay members of the church. So
gotcha. You guys are absolutely terrible, but your takes are amazing. You guys are awesome. You guys are too funny. You guys are too funny. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. We're going to move on to the next one here too. Oh, whoops. Sorry about the camera angle. And David Bednar is going to make this list a couple of times here because he gave a talk called The Lord's Side of the Line, where he crushes a little kid. This is unreal.
David A. Bednar once grabbed a young man from behind. Think I'm exaggerating?
A sin that's right here doesn't look that bad, does it? Right where my shoe is? So, that's not that big of a deal. Okay, take just a little step over here. One more step. Just a little more. Okay. Now you try to get back over on the other side. Can you get over there?
No.
For an old man, I'm pretty strong, huh? You're not even trying very hard. Come on. All right, now, remember what got you over here? You came all the way from back over there to right at the edge of the line by just not doing the things that you know you should do. And once you get over here, you're not in control anymore. Okay? All right, now step back over here.
I've already done a full video of my analysis on this interaction, but I want to know what you think in the comments.
Rebecca, what do you think? How do you think that little kid felt about that interaction?
Now, this is very disturbing. Some people watch that, they kind of laugh. But if you look at that little boy's face, he is absolutely terrified. He has tears in his eyes. He is trying so hard not to cry. And shame on the adults there, especially the ones right there in the front row, or his own parents who didn't see that he's completely traumatized. Somebody needed to raise their hand and say, you know what? I think he's a little stressed out. You could do it nicely, but this was completely inappropriate. It was not funny at all. And as a parent, Elder Bednar should have known better. Look at this little guy's face. It is not funny.
That is absolutely peak cringe. What do you think there, Landon? Any take on that one?
yeah, that's a great example of an apostle of the Lord leading someone into sin, because the boy didn't want to cross the line and the apostle took him there. So evidently following the apostle, and maybe he crushed the boy because he saw President Nelson crush a boy in the cafeteria.
Okay, next up here, moving right along, a day in the life of David Bednar here. And he released a couple of Instagram videos where he talked about his life working at the church office building, but culture over there at the cultural hall, he redid them and redubbed them and made them pretty peak cringe here. Let's see what's going on with Susan's husband.
Hi, it's me, David A. Bednar. I'm a really important person. I'm an apostle for the Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. People don't think I do anything, so the purpose of this video is to refute that and show that us apostles are just normal, wealthy white people like you. Here I am walking out of our private parking garage that no regular people can access. This is my office. It's larger than any normal person's office, and it's cluttered AF. As you can see, I have many doodads from my travels all around the world, as well as who's its and what's its galore. Now, I will spin in a circle. I'm a normal person. Now, I will walk through a door and pretend to pay attention to my secretary, who you're never going to see on camera because she's a woman. Now I'm walking down a hallway just like normal people do. Oh look, it's the founder of our church that married at least 34 women, many of whom were just young girls. Praise to the man. Now it's time to pretend to be busy. Look at my one Post-it note.
Okay, we're going to talk over the rest of this. How do you feel about the day in the life of Elder Bednar here, Rebecca?
You know, this is the first thing I ever saw from college. This is the first thing that put him on the map for me, and I think a lot of people, and we now realize he's so wildly talented. But again, this is right tracks with Elder Bednar, because he recently put out a statement about social media, how your average day, to you, it's average, but to everyone else in the world, it's very special. So go ahead and put everything on social media, everything you do, your kids do, that have to do with living the gospel, because it's going to impress people and probably bring converts. So he's doing it right here.
Landon, does this humanize Susan's husband, or does this make him look more robotic than ever?
It surprised me, because I kind of said, boy, they don't do anything really that important. It looks like anyone else going to the office and they just do a few tasks they have to get done for the day and leave.
Yeah, and all he ever interacts with is basically middle-aged white guys just like him. Hey, by the way, there's Patrick Kieran, who was a member of the presidency of the 70, by the way. And somebody has noticed that there could be some church security officers who make an appearance here because it looks like they're packing heat. So he literally has the security nearby, even though he's in the church office building. Instead of humanizing someone, I don't think that this really did anything for David Bednar. For me, this is absolute peak cringe. Any last thoughts on this one?
It's a great video. Check it out, everybody, with Colt.
Yeah, culture's great.
Now, we got to be very careful on this or we will get a copyright strike. So we might have to delete this one out. I'm only going to play about 7 seconds of this, but this was back in 2012 when Jeffrey Holland did an interview with John Sweeney with regards to Mitt Romney making blood oaths in the temple. And Elder Holland really, according to this, he really, the most charitable way you could say it is that he made a misstatement, but it is definitely peak cringe.
Is that true? That's not true. That's not true. We do not have penalties in the temple.
Wait a minute. This is before they were taken out, right? This is when Mitt Romney went through the temple. There would have been penalties in the temple, but Jeff Holland seems to disagree with that. I don't understand. Do I not know my Mormon history? Can you guys help me out here?
Maybe has he gone through the temple? Maybe he hasn't. Maybe he doesn't know.
This is how they operate, because probably at this time they had taken out the oaths. So he said, "Oh no, we don't have oaths." But I went through the temple when we took an oath that we would cut our throat and cut our guts and all of this stuff. So you can't tell me that we didn't take blood oaths, because that's exactly what I did. And I came out of the temple going, "What in the hell was that?" So he may be looking and saying, "Oh no, we took it out, so now I can lie about it." But no doubt Mitt Romney would have taken that oath that he was asked about. No doubt. And that's a perfectly acceptable question for a reporter to ask a church leader about someone who could take the oath of office as the president of the United States. Has he taken an oath to any other organization or person besides the United States of America?
He played a game with the tenses there of saying, we don't currently have blood oaths in the temple, but that's not what John Sweeney asked him. He said, when Mitt Romney went through the temple, would he have had the blood oaths? So it's a really disingenuous response, which for me is peak cringe. And Jeff Holland is going to appear several times on this peak cringe, number 27. He throws a taffy temper tantrum.
But I think there's some days here where we get a little weak-kneed, we get a little willy-nilly and say, I'm going to bail on this. Don't you dare bail. I am so furious with people who leave this church. I don't know whether furious is the solid word. But I am. And I say, what on earth kind of conviction is that? What kind of patty cake taffy pull experience is that? As if none of this ever mattered, as if nothing in our contemporary life mattered, as if this is all just supposed to be just exactly the way I want it, and answer every one of my questions and pursue this and occupy that and defy this, and then maybe I'll be a Latter-day Saint. Well, there's too much Irish in me for that. This church means everything to me, and I'm not going to leave it, and I'm not going to let you leave it. The first great rule of a storm at sea is stay in the boat. This is no time for you to say, oh, well, yeah, it looks like, I don't know, nobody cares. I'll get up here on the edge and do a little half gainer over the side. Boy, that's a terrific performance. I tell you, you're in for a good experience. That's the dumbest thing you can do. And the only thing dumber would be for somebody else to follow you. You stay in the boat and pull the life jacket down on you and grab an oar and just hang on, and it's going to get calm.
Oh, should everyone just stay in the boat? And was this an unhinged I said it was a temper tantrum. Was I being too hard on Jeff Holland? Because this really seems like an unhinged rant to me.
Sounded like a first grader throwing a temper tantrum to me, because it's important to me. It should be important to everybody else, and no one else should be allowed to leave because it's important to me. And that makes me feel bad when you leave. It's unimportant to me. So once I've learned that it's not true, the integrity within every person should be to leave. And for him to say that you don't have that right is just infuriating to me. He looked like a first grader throwing a tantrum.
And Rebecca, he continues to pound this home. Stay in the boat. Don't you dare bail. And if you did, no one should join you. That's a very high control tactic.
Absolutely. High control, high demand. And I keep thinking this was in 2016. You heard all that laughter. I guarantee that at least some of those people are no longer in the boat.
That is a fact. And for me, this next one, number 26 here, we're about halfway through here. This for me could be the most cringeworthy moment ever in Mormon history. There's just so many of them, just like we just saw. But Jeff Holland here, this is a leaked address to the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah, a number of years ago. And this really makes my blood boil. The way that he treats these missionaries is absolutely disgraceful.
I hope there's no one within the sound of my voice who wants to go home. That just comes to me. It makes me wonder whether there's someone here who does want to go home, because that wasn't even remotely in my mind. I don't know who you are, and I don't know how seriously you're entertaining the thought, but don't you ever go home. Don't you dare leave this place. Not for God's sake, not for the church's sake, not for President Hinckley's sake. Somehow, I think they can probably handle it, but don't you dare leave here for your sake. I have lived on and off in my general authority life. I have come in contact around the world with missionaries who did not see their mission through. I'm not talking about medical releases or emergencies or tragedies. I'm talking about somebody who just said, I don't like doing this, it's too hard, and I'm going home and let my mother take care of it. I have met those people around the world. And if there is a more sorrowful, if there is a more anguished, and in a sense, if you promise not to misunderstand me, if there is, in a sense, a more pitiable group in all the world, I do not know who it is. Now, that's strong language. That's really strong language. But I told you before, my mission means everything to me. I would wrestle you to the floor. I'd pull the curtains down. I'd get chains. I don't know, is there something on here that we tie people with? I don't see anything to tie people with. I'd rip the cords off the television camera to keep you here. Not for our sake, not for, you think one little missionary and 58,000, that isn't gonna bring the church to its knees, but it's gonna ruin your life if you don't do the best thing you've ever had a chance to do, however hard it is, and however hard it may yet be.
Landon, this is probably one of the worst takes out there. I really don't even know where to start on this. But, Jeff Holland has this reputation that he's an empathetic and loving and gentle leader. But what we see time and time again from him behind the scenes is an absolutely fear-mongering, just reprehensible conduct. Imagine sitting in that MTC while someone who you revere shames you into staying on a mission if you're having doubts. It's beyond the pale.
Yeah, I had not seen this before. And this man, as I watched it, I said, wow, this is a master manipulator. He knows that 18-year-old kids who just got out of high school, who are in an MTC, who have been put into this study for 12, 13 hours a day, when a lot of people are not indoor people who want to study for 12, 13 hours a day without breaks. And he knows that a majority of them want to go home, and then he acts and feigns as if, I'm getting a feeling that one of you wants to go home, when he knows that by saying that, he's actually talking to 90% of the group there. What a manipulation. My respect, which was none for Jeffrey Holland, has just gone even lower.
Yeah, Rebecca, imagine that you're a missionary, or that you're the mother of a missionary who's sitting in there, who might have some questions about their mission, and then they get that message from Jeff Holland that is extremely manipulative, that tells them that they will regret it for the rest of their life if they don't finish. How do you think that makes people feel?
Yeah, the fact that he said, my mission means everything to me. Again, we're not you. He has absolutely no understanding of what might be going on in a young man's mind like that. Thank God I think the attitude of parents and ward members and even other church leaders are different now. And that when a missionary comes home, there are all kinds of programs in place to support and help this person, because I'm telling you, mentally, it can absolutely destroy you. These kids are fragile. They've been beaten up mentally on the mission, no matter how long they stay, and they need support on the other side of it. So I feel like there's been progress made. I don't know what year this was, but this is reprehensible to do this. He is responsible for a lot of, I think, negative outcomes from that kind of rhetoric in these poor young men. I mean, I've seen it. I sent missionaries out. I know what happens. I know the mental process. They're precarious as it is. And this is absolutely irresponsible.
Yeah, Jeff Holland is going to make our list several times here. We also have his dubious claim where he said that the church had double-digit stake growth all the time, but when it was fact-checked, he was absolutely in error. This is peak cringe at number 25.
We're in the midst of incredible growth, staggering growth in the church. It's the single biggest problem we have. It's the best problem we could have, but it's the biggest. We are reeling under the implications of the growth that we have in this church. Last Thursday, I've been out here this Thursday. I've been with Elder and Sister Holland and been with Elder and Sister Robbins this week. So I missed the temple meeting this Thursday, but a week ago Thursday, we created 15 stakes. And we're doing that más o menos every week, more or less. It might not be 15, but it's the week before it was 12. Sometimes it's 8 or whatever, and it'll be a little uneven. But the point is, I mean, we're talking double-digit stakes every week.
The problem isn't double-digit stakes every week, Rebecca. The problem is that when this is fact-checked, that it is in no way, shape, or form accurate at all. It's a major disconnect between the reality and what he's claiming.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, is someone telling him that? Is someone, who comes in and gives them information telling them that? Are they even aware that the information they're putting out is not factual at all? Now, I know they do some juggling. For example, say there are 7 wards. They'll shut down 2 of the wards. They'll make a stake with fewer wards, 2 stakes, 3 wards each. There's a lot. It's a shell game. So there are ways that they can show growth through stakes that have fewer wards. But again, it's not the biggest problem you have by far.
Yeah, so 15 stakes back in this time frame, a stake would have been 3,000 members. So that'd be 50,000 people a week. If you times that by 50,000 by 50 weeks, what is that? It'd be like growing at a rate of like 2 million members per year. It's absolutely absurd when the church really gains at a rate of around 250,000 for an entire year. This is just a demonstrably untrue statement. And we have to assume here that he knows how many people are joining the church. I mean, I guess we could give him a pass on ignorance and saying that he's being fed misinformation, but that is an incredibly charitable take. It seems like Jeff Holland has a consistent problem with either exaggeration or just telling the truth. Landon, can you give us a quick take on this one?
Yeah, it sounds like he's creating 8, 10, 12, 15 mistakes each week.
Perfect sum up. Perfect. Now, also, this is one of his other infamous addresses here where he was talking about musket fire with regards to the LGBTQ issue. This has caused a great deal of consternation out there. And it is a significant, in my opinion, misstep on his part.
Then Elder Oaks said challengingly, "I'd like to hear a little more musket fire from the Temple of Learning." He said this in a way that could have applied to a host of topics in various departments, but the one he specifically mentioned was the doctrine of the family and defending marriage as the union of a man and a woman.
See, this is a really problematic talk because do we need more musket fire when it comes to defending the traditional family? That's a hyperbolic rhetoric that could be used to justify violence. It's a very irresponsible statement. Any thoughts on this one?
I think the consequences of this talk, they did not even fathom. I have a very TBM friend who, when she asked me, what did you think of that talk? I thought she was going to say, I loved it. And even she said, I don't know what to think about that. I think the shockwaves from that are still being felt.
You know, and Landon, the crazy part about this is that the church has doubled down on this talk, and it is now required reading for all freshmen at BYU. They don't seem to think that there's a problem with it.
It's another one of those 15 mistakes that they make. It makes no sense. I don't understand it. I know more people who were upset about that than probably any other talk in the last decade.
Yeah, definitely. And unfortunately, Jeff Holland is going to appear on our list once again here, where in March of 2012, he was at Harvard University and he was asked about the church's Proposition 8 donations back in California, where the church was trying to ensure that same-sex marriage was struck down there. And he said that the church didn't donate to Proposition 8.
At a Harvard Q&A, when asked,
could you elaborate on the instances in which the church will take a political stand? What immediately comes to mind is the often cited sort of material impact the church had on the passage of Proposition
Prop 8. Let's use that example.
And then also sort of how whatever that political involvement would be squared with the notion that, for instance, Americans' ability to have people exercise their beliefs freely actually led to the ability of the church to bloom in the way that
Sure. Good point.
Elder Holland replied,
institutionally, not a single dollar, not one red cent of money from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint went into Proposition 8 or any other comparable proposition that I know of.
Rebecca, he said that the church didn't donate to Proposition 8 and that it was all members. Can you please fact check that?
Yeah, false, false, false. We have podcasted on this several times. He did say institutionally. So technically there's some wiggle room right there. What they did do is they had Salt Lake call stake presidents who called members, high net worth members, so they knew about their tithing and how much they were giving, and they asked them to write checks to another organization that would then funnel it into Prop 8. Everybody was asked to give $10,000. I myself have a relative who was invited to a fireside of very high net worth members. This is in California, and they were encouraged to donate. So the state president received a call from Salt Lake. This is what our guest who we had on one of our shows told us. And then they were told to write a check to a third party, and that was funneled into Prop 8. But even aside from that, they did show that there was about, what was it, Landon, $188,000 that they did pay as far as flights, dinners, things like that, infrastructure around supporting the campaign against Prop 8. So not true. False, false, false.
Yeah, Landon, it seems like Jeff Holland plays fast and loose with the facts, whether it's stake growth or whether it's the church's donations to Proposition 8.
That's the Mormon way. They do that with everything. They didn't donate to the mall. They didn't do anything with Prop 8. They, Joseph Smith didn't marry 30 women. You play fast and loose with the facts. That's what this has developed into.
It's funny that you mentioned, or ironic that you mentioned the mall, because Gordon Hinckley is up next at number 22 in General Conference, where he talked about tithing and Jesus's mall. And somebody cut this up in a very amusing way and had him go against That 70s Show. This is very amusing here, but it is definitely peak cringe, since it appears that the $1.4 billion for the building of the City Creek Mall did indeed come from tithing in some way, shape, or form, which is in contrast to what President Hinckley said. But this is an amusing take, although it is peak cringe.
Now, we could wish for more baptisms in the United States and Canada, but that could be said of everywhere throughout the world.
Well, it's a tough world. And people don't always get what they want, especially you.
The church is undertaking a huge development project in the interest of protecting the environment of Temple Square.
Sounds stupid? Have a good time.
While the cost will be great, it will not involve the expenditure of tithing funds.
What?
You're lying. You're lying.
However, the faithfulness of our people, continues to be demonstrated in the payment of tithes and offerings. Altogether, I can only report that the Lord is richly blessing his church.
God, you're dumb.
We'll start with you first, Landon. That's an amusing mashup of Gordon Hinckley and the 70s show. But the problem, of course, here is that it looks like the City Creek Mall was paid for with tithing, or at least some form of tithing. And that is in contrast to what Gordon said in General Conference.
Well, RLUIPA allows malls to be built in temple squares, I believe. And so evidently you can justify anything if you say it's tithing money for the church. Now we can build anything. But that absolutely, I remember when this was said, or at least when he said none were used, because at that time I was questioning the church, and I was going, this doesn't seem right that we're spending money on a mall. And then he came out and assured us that had not happened. And then we find out that he was really just using semantics, and it was interest off the tithing, as if you couldn't tell one from the other. It's all in one bank account,
Yes, he said that it was invested reserves, which had nothing to do with tithing. Unfortunately, invested reserves and tithing are basically the same thing. Can you give us your take on this one, Rebecca?
Yep, this will all come out as the lawsuits proceed and discovery happens. I'm very confident that will happen. And I think there's going to be some revelations that we're not going to believe about this scenario. I also think it's interesting that they keep saying, and they use this to justify all their development around temples and the malls and things that they build in different places, is to protect the environment around the temple. In this case, by building a mall with shops that most of us can't afford to shop at. Maybe Rue 21, I can go in and buy some lingerie. That's about it. And I guess that protects the environment around the temple.
Unless, of course, you wear garments, then you can't buy lingerie.
The garment, Landon. It is no longer
garment of the Holy Priesthood.
It's the garment, or the garment of the Holy Priesthood. And people are calling each other out on that right and left.
I had a bunch to say, but you guys are too funny. I can't stop anything that you guys said. Now, Gordon Hinckley also appears in number 21, where he talks about church's finances, and he's going to talk about the transparency and how church finances are open to the members. Wait a minute.
In my countries, we say people's churches, the Protestants, the Catholics, they publish all their budgets openly to all the public.
Yeah.
Why it's impossible for your church?
Well, we simply think that information belongs to those who made the contribution and not to the world. That's the only thing. Yes.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. Okay, sorry about that last clip in there, but Landon, he said that the church finances are open to the members of the church, but not to the world. Can you fact check Gordon for us?
I could write a letter and ask them if they would send me a budget item of where all the money went to, because I did pay tithing for 34 years. I doubt they're going to send me anything that tells me how it's used.
Yeah, Rebecca, is any of the church's finances open to the members, or is it just one big kabuki theater and totally opaque?
Zero transparency. That's why an organization like the Widows Might, with the smartest financial geniuses out there, are working night and day to try to discover what they can through the methods that are available, even to understand just an iota of the church's finances. I will point out that in other places of the world, like he described France, places where you must be transparent, Australia, Canada, every place there's transparency, the church is up to something. There's something not quite right going on in almost every place where there is required transparency.
That is a good point. Number 20, Gordon Hinckley appeared on Larry King, and Larry is going to ask him about polygamy, and Gordon is going to make a very surprising assertion here about polygamy not being doctrinal. That's a surprise. Let's see what we got going on here.
But maybe in saying that it's rather than just a state matter, encouraging the state to prosecute.
I don't know. We'll consider that.
I'm giving you an idea.
Yeah,
Would you look better if you were?
I don't know that we would or not. As far as I'm concerned, I have nothing to do with it. It belongs to the civil officers of the state.
You condemn it.
I condemn it, yes, as a practice, because I think it is not doctrinal, it is not legal, and this church takes the position that we will abide by the law.
Wait a minute, Rebecca, polygamy is not doctrinal? I thought it's still in section 132 of the Doctrine and Covenants. Maybe I haven't kept up on all of my Mormon doctrine.
Maybe you haven't. No, this is another case of President Hinckley, the master PR spinner with his little wink and his smile. And I loved him too. I absolutely did till I got older and kind of dug in and saw what he was doing. And there's another interview, maybe you're going to show it about, do we get planets? But he'll say one thing to the public and then he'll go to conference and with another little wink, he'll let people know that he really does know what the doctrine is, but he just has to kind of smooth it over for the rest of the world. He does this over and over, says one thing on this side, says another thing to the members. Master PR wizard.
Yeah, that particular thing where he backed up he said, I don't know that we teach that. I don't know that we emphasize that. That wasn't caught on camera. That was just in an article. So yeah, but that's part of it. Any take on this one here, Landon, because President Nelson himself is married to 2 women and so is President Oaks. They're both polygamists, but I thought polygamy is not doctrinal. Can you clear this up for us?
There's going to be some pissed off wives when they get to heaven and find out that their husband is sleeping with women they're not married to.
Okay. Number 19, Dallin Oaks, PBS, the Mormon documentary here. And this is one of the most infamous clips in all of Mormon cinema.
It's wrong to criticize leaders of the church, even if the criticism is true.
Yeah, and I'm going to leave him up there on the screen because it's a certain look on his face that he's saying while he's saying that. I don't know if I can get that. There's a certain look that Dallin Oaks has when he's saying that. And that is absolute cringe here, saying, even if a church leader has done something wrong or taught something wrong or is just completely wrong, you can't even say one thing about it because you're evil, speaking of the Lord's anointed, which is what you promised not to do in the temple. Any thoughts on this one, guys?
Just the aspect of high control, right? There's no way that you can reach the leaders, ask the leaders anything, talk to the leaders, make a statement where you might question what they're saying. There's absolutely none. And when I see that clip, just the way his lips are kind of curling up, it reminds me of, well, sort of, his heart was 3 sizes too small, right? So it does. It just does.
This isn't that unusual. There's a lot of places where, you can't criticize the leaders, even if they might be wrong. North Korea, China, Iran. There's a lot of places that you don't criticize the leaders. We all should not criticize our leaders and be in happy places like that.
Yeah, and I believe this is what you were talking about here, Rebecca. Is that about right?
I didn't say it out loud. I just quoted a little part of a poem.
Well, I didn't say anything either. I'd like the record to show here. And this isn't the only cringe statement that we have from Dallin Oaks.
Let me say about electric shock treatments at BYU. When I became president of BYU, that had been discontinued earlier and it never went on under my administration.
Wait a minute. He's saying that electric shock therapy didn't occur at BYU during his administration, where certain gay students were hooked up to electrodes and shocked. But it seems like that's been fact-checked. Can you help us out on that one, Landon?
Not just gay people were shocked, straight people were electroshocked. Mormonish has an episode coming up. We have talked to a man who went through this electroshock therapy while at BYU, being a straight man simply because his bishop suspected he was gay and asked him to go to this, encouraged greatly from the university to go and through this therapy. So this is an episode coming up. You're going to be shocked when you see it.
Well, let me just ask you, Rebecca, is this a lie or is this just poor memory? Can you answer that question for us?
I hope you didn't really mean to say shocked, Landon, because this is not at all a laughing matter. No, he was president through 1980 or 81. And there are 14 men that were in a study voluntarily that happened during that time. And of course, as Landon alluded to, we have stumbled across something that is beyond that, as far as people in power at the university reaching out to people and telling them they have to undergo this. So you're going to want to watch to catch that episode. But again, does the president of the university know what's going on at the university? The person that we spoke to that we're going to air the episode on, everyone around him knew, his bishop knew, his home bishop knew, his guidance counselor knew, his professor knew. Everybody associated with campus knew that he was undergoing this. So does the president know what a professor knows, what a bishop knows, what a guidance counselor knows? I'm not sure. I can't say, but everyone around this gentleman that we talked to seemed to know, and encourage him to go to this treatment.
Good to know. We'll be looking forward to that episode on the Mormonish podcast. We'll be definitely want to watch that one. Next up, we have a whole section here, guys, on Brad Wilcox.
Oh,
He's
my
going to make
God.
our list quite a few times.
I'm going to need more cake.
Keeps getting better and better, doesn't it? You keep thinking it's going to get worse, but it's getting better. Let's hear what Brad Wilcox says about Black members of the church and also just Black people in general.
Now, sadly, you live in a time where a lot of people get uptight about priesthood issues.
Oh, no.
It's one of the most glorious things we have in the church, and yet people want to sit and fight about it, get uptight about it.
Uptight.
Now, I don't mean to oversimplify a complex issue, but I sure think we make it a little harder than it needs to be.
Really?
How come the Blacks didn't get the priesthood until 1978? What's up with that, Brother Wilcox? What, Brigham Young was a jerk? Members of the church were prejudiced? Maybe we're asking the wrong question.
Uh-oh.
Maybe instead of saying, why did the Blacks have to wait until 1978?
Uh-oh.
Maybe what we should be asking is, why did the whites and other races have to wait until 1829?
Guys, help me out. Help me.
Okay, so he is Teflon Brad. I thought for sure that was the end of him. Didn't you also? There's no way that you come back from a statement like that. And everything, all the aftermath, there's no way that you come back. Not only did he come back, he's promoted into the young men's presidency. He's now using his middle initial and going by Brad Lee. He's obviously on the fast track to become an apostle. I just can't fathom it. I cannot fathom it.
Landon, why is it that why are we asking the wrong question about all of this anyway? It's all about the whites, isn't it, Landon?
Yeah, I think we should ask why is Brad being promoted in the church? That almost shows that the church is fully supporting what Brad is saying. That seems to be what I get out of that they just keep moving him up.
Yep, there's no accountability in the church for the senior leaders of the church. There's absolutely none whatsoever. You can say anything or do almost anything, including criminal or homophobic or racist comments, and you will not be held to account. In fact, you will be promoted. Now, this next one here, Brad talks about how atheists out there, folks, that they can actually kill you. No, I am not at all exaggerating about this. Atheists are dangerous, according to Bradley R. Wilcox.
Brad Wilcox is at it again. Well, actually, this footage is from 2021, but it has been doing the rounds recently, so let's take a look.
Studies show that when the bus goes off the road, when the train derails, when the plane is coming down for an emergency landing, that in that moment of crisis, the believers are the ones who will turn and help someone else. The non-believers are the ones who will step on anybody they have to in order to get to their own selfish desire and reach their own selfish goal.
Which studies? Name them. Because if you are going to demonize an entire group of people as immoral simply because they do not believe in God and say that studies show this to be the case, you'd better bring the receipts. Particularly as this was your argument to undermine an actual study that showed a majority of people do not think a belief in God is necessary to be moral.
The global God divide.
Let me know what you think.
Landon, it's those filthy atheists that could kill you. They're going to stomp on you. If that bus is going down, you better just stick with the believers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, someone ought to tell that to 130 people in Mountain Meadows, where it was the believers who turned and shot them in the head. So it holds no water whatsoever. I can point to plenty of examples where church believers have turned on people and non-believers or even believers that just aren't Mormons. It just holds no water.
And Rebecca, this is the perfect example of where Brad Wilcox is going to turn you against your neighbor. It's an us versus them mentality, and he's fear mongering, and there's no studies that are associated with that I'm aware of.
No, that's exactly right. I had to have like 5 pieces of cake. I was shoveling it in while I was watching that because I hate that clip so much. It absolutely is fear mongering, and it leads people like our family members, our children and parents to say to us, how will you be moral now that you've left the church? How will you be moral? Well, maybe we all have a moral inner compass. Maybe that's what we're following, right? This bothers me so much. It absolutely is fear mongering and very damaging.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrible rhetoric. And there's also another one here where Brad Wilcox is going to talk about your nipples. No, I'm not making this stuff up here, folks.
He just had a good vibe. He knew the beats. He knew when kids were going to laugh.
And even for your nipples to stick out away from your body. Now, at first you're freaking out. You're like, I'm turning into my mom. But you're not.
I know that's a quick clip here, but that is Pete Cringe here because he teaches maturation and he's talking about celestial nipples here. No, I'm not exaggerating here. This is absolutely cringeworthy to have Brad Wilcox, after all of his rhetoric, then be teaching your maturation classes. And don't forget, he's not a healthcare provider. He's not a nurse. He has no background in this whatsoever. All he is a Mormon general authority in Utah, and yet he gets the calls for these. I would hate to see have my son in one of these classes with Brad Wilcox. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, we're all trying to figure that out. Why and how does he have the credential to be able to teach in the Utah public school system, and especially this topic to extremely vulnerable young people about a very sensitive, sometimes embarrassing topic? So how is this happening? None of us can figure it out.
And don't forget, Landon, before I give you a take on this, that he has also written in his books about the evils of homosexuality, and yet he's in the public schools teaching about sexuality. Naturally, your worldview can come in there, and if you think that homosexuals are perverse and going to hell, that's a problem, isn't it?
I would guess so. I didn't think it would be possible to make me cringe talking about nipples, but he did it.
Landon.
We're going to have to do this. This is going to have to be Mormonish after dark, I think, with Landon on here.
It always is with Landon, I'm telling you. And me just eating cake, so.
Okay, Brad is going to top himself in this next one where he's going to explain Joseph Smith's famous rock in the hat, and he's going to make this very understandable for all of us. Unfortunately, it is going to be cringeworthy, as everything that he does simply is. He's a professor at BYU of ancient religion, even though he has absolutely no credentials to teach these classes.
I'm Brad Wilcox, and I'm starting a new semester teaching Book of Mormon at BYU. And I thought I'd share with you some of the visual aids that I use with my students. This is a replica of the Seer stone, or one of the Seer stones that Joseph Smith had. This was the stone that he found in a well when digging a well when he was a young man. And then when he would look into the stone, he would be able to see things that other people could not see.
I need to have them somewhere dark so I can read the spiritual light. Oh, okay, write this down. Christ appeared before the Nephites.
And that's how the Book of Mormon was written. Dum, 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 dum.
And part of the translation of the Book of Mormon was done with the Urim and Thummim, but part of the translation was also done with a seer stone, or several seer stones. Now, people often get confused because they hear that Joseph Smith put a seer stone inside of a hat and then would look into the hat to see the seer stone.
Dad, did you know that Joseph Smith guy read the Book of Mormon out of a hat?
And?
It's just that the Book of Mormon says a lot of strange stuff, like that Adam and Eve lived in Jackson County, Missouri.
Yes?
But school taught me that the first man and woman lived in Africa.
Well, you can't believe everything school tells you, Stan.
And they think it sounds weird, but when I compare for my students the seer stone to a cell phone, and I say, hey, a smooth surface on which words appear that can be read, then it makes more sense to them. I also say, hey, when you're out on a sunny day and you're trying to look at your, wish it were darker. We often go like this to try to see the words better. Well, no wonder Joseph Smith put his cell phone or his seer stone in the hat so that he could block out light and he could see what was being written, what was given to him on the seer stone a little clearer.
Gotcha.
So maybe with these visuals in mind, then it will help you understand a little better, just like I hope it helps my students understand a little bit better about the translation process of the Book of Mormon.
Rebecca, I can definitely see how he is a professor of ancient religion, bringing in all of these incredible concepts. The rock in the hat is just like your cell phone. I had no idea.
Yeah, what I love is that none of these guys can bring themselves to actually put their head in the hat like you have to do it. You saw it there in the cartoon. President Nelson, he kind of leans toward the hat. Brad kind of lean. You got to stick your freaking face in it. And it absolutely looks ridiculous. And it absolutely looks like a magical element that nobody wants that association with the beginnings of the church. And I have to laugh because here he is just talking about the Seer stone. Now, when I took Book of Mormon at BYU, no way. Absolutely no way. If a professor would have ever brought that into class or that idea, well, look what happened to D. Michael Quinn, right? Absolutely no way. Yet we do know now that back in that era, President Kimball had taken one of the Seer stones to a BYU professor, Dean Jesse, I think it is. I've had 3 people now tell me that they were in the class when Dean Jesse said this. But anyway, he said, can you reboot this? Can you get this going again? Can you start using this? So a promise a Seer stone to a history professor trying to get it online. I don't know.
Interesting. I wasn't aware of that, but Landon, as far as I'm concerned, it seems like everything that Brad just cringe and trying to make this explanatory to us all, but some just, I don't know what it is. It's a creep factor. I don't know. You can call me prejudice if you want, but there's just something weird about Brad Will.
If the Seer stone was like a cell, and Joseph wasn't translating scriptures, he was watching porn and sexting with 14-year-olds.
Gotcha. Okay. That's typical Landon take. We're with you. And as far as Brad Wilcox is concerned here, he says, if you leave the church, you will lose absolutely everything.
I have a really simple question for you. Is this true?
I hope you realize that if you walk away from this religion, you lose everything. You lose everything. Everything that truly matters most.
Do you lose everything? Current members, do you believe this? Ex-members, was this your experience? Let me know your answer in the comments.
Landon, if you walk away from the church, do you lose everything?
Well, you do lose your family in a lot of cases, but that's not because you walked away. It's because they teach them to walk away from you. So that to me is the sad part, is they want you to believe you lose everything. But my experience has been, I found a whole new way of viewing the world, a whole new life focus, and it's been exciting to leave. I'm glad I did.
I think most people that actually do step away, they do not feel they have lost everything. However, exactly what Landon said, their family feels they've lost everything. And that's what makes it so sad, is that your family is devastated for you. It usually causes a rift. As Landon said, you can lose family members, you can lose connection. And so it's not that you're losing, that the believers have been told that you're going to lose everything. And that's how they operate. That's the mindset. And they're devastated for you.
Yeah, gotcha. Now, we've got a bunch of Russell Nelson clips here, especially considering that it's his birthday. And by the way, I do have this ticker on the bottom. Do you guys want me to run this President Nelson 100-year birthday special? How do you like that banner?
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. Now, his actual birthday is on September 9th. We are going to be airing this sometime during his birthday week. And he does have a special broadcast on that day. And 100 years old. I mean, I have to say that is an accomplishment. A lot of people don't live that long.
That certainly is. And here we get probably his most famous address, in my opinion. He could not wait to rush this one out here, where he said that if you use the word Mormon, that's a major victory for Satan.
Today, I feel compelled to discuss with you a matter of great importance. Some weeks ago, I released a statement regarding a course correction for the name of the church. I did this because the Lord impressed upon my mind the importance of the name he decreed for his church.
Gotcha.
Even the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
Let me explain why we care so deeply about this issue.
He's really serious.
The name of the church is not negotiable. The name of the church is not negotiable. When the Savior clearly states what the name of his church should be, and even precedes his declaration with, "Thus shall my church be called," he's serious.
Ooh.
And if we allowed nicknames to be used or adopt or even sponsor those nicknames ourselves, he is offended.
Wow.
He is offended.
Really?
He is offended.
Gotcha.
To remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Bam.
Is a major victory for Satan.
Yes. Okay. Do nicknames, we'll start with you, Landon. Do nicknames offend Jesus?
I was just wondering when he was speaking about that, did he ever go by Russ? I wonder in his lifetime. That would be the same thing.
Yeah, and the most amazing thing about this, Rebecca, is that the church spent millions of dollars on the I Am a Mormon campaign, but Rusty has been trying to get rid of this name for a long, long time, hasn't he?
He has, and he was sort of censured publicly because of that by President Hinckley, who said, no, Mormon is a good name, means more good. I did get some information, somebody who has some contacts inside church headquarters. They said that a lot of people in the media department are still sitting on the Mormon material, the Mormon name, because they feel when President Nelson is no longer the prophet, that it will gradually return to what it was. They also say in the media department, according to this source, that it has wreaked havoc, as we all knew it would, SEO, on the brand of the church, and it has actually had a very negative consequence. And I will say, as far as personal interactions, it is a way that really lets people shut you down. I have a family member who is in, a family member who is out. The family member who is out was having a very heartfelt conversation with the other family member saying, oh, it's just so hard. I mean, when you're a Mormon, let me stop you right there. We're not Mormons. We're members of the church, shuts the conversation down right there. And it happens all the time. It happens in comments on social media. It's a way to other people. Well, I still say I'm a Mormon. We're all Mormons. We were Mormons.
Careful.
Again, the victory. It's like Beetlejuice. I'm going to say Mormon.
Any question, she's an apostate.
That's right. That's it. No, it just, this really bugs me, this whole thing, because it's not correct. Not at all.
I am absolutely shocked about what I am hearing right here, especially after we just heard President Nelson say that that's a major victory for Satan. I am shocked to the core.
I never thought I'd hear Rebecca say the M word.
The M word?
Mormon. Okay,
no, I think it is going to go back. I predict it will, because I think people are tired of having to say that long name, and no one knows who you are. Tell me you're a Mormon without saying you're a Mormon. It's impossible.
Okay, next up, Russell Nelson and his magical hat. He's going to give the magic hat a shot too.
Quite miraculous, really, through the gift and power of God. We have a lot of suggestions about how it was done. We know that they had a table like this. We know they had the golden plates covered usually, and Joseph used these the Urim and Thummim, seer stones in the hat, and it was easier for him to see the light when he take that position. To me, it's like having my mobile phone.
What?
At my hand, and I can get messages on it that you can't see.
What?
That's true.
Oh.
And they had nothing like that. So it's just the gift and power of God.
They keep saying that the rock in the hat is just like a cell phone, but that's not how cell phones work. I can show my cell phone to you and you can confirm that there's something on there. I mean, we could even, I guess, call the Verizon company and they can also confirm that something's on there. A rock on the hat is nothing like a cell phone. How do these guys not understand this?
No, and this is the gift and power of Apple. So I love it. No,
Okay.
Again, though, I'm glad you showed that. They cannot bring themselves to do it, to show how occult that looks, to put your head all the way in the hat and then to say words. They can't do it. They will not do it.
This shows you that this is talking points that they're spreading out through the whole church, that it's like a cell phone. They just got to somehow link it to something that is real so that people can say, oh, yeah, it's just like a cell phone. It's nothing like a cell phone. It's a rock. It's a rock.
And of course, President Nelson still has this rock. And if it is so easy to use, just like a cell phone, then why does he or anyone else never use it? That's a good question. Next up is Russell Nelson's Spring 2021 General Conference with the lazy learners and lax disciples.
Through your faith, Jesus Christ will increase your ability to move the mountains in your life. Even though your personal challenges may loom as large as Mount Everest, your mountains may be loneliness, doubt, illness, or other personal problems.
Like the SEC fine.
Your mountains will vary. And yet the answer to each of your challenges is to increase your faith.
In Rusty.
That takes work.
You betcha.
Lazy learners and lax disciples will always struggle to muster even a particle of faith.
They sure will.
To do anything well requires effort. Becoming a true disciple of Jesus Christ is no exception. Increasing your faith and trust in him takes effort.
You bet. If you leave the church, Landon, you're just lazy or you're lax. There could be absolutely no justification ever whatsoever of someone leaving the church other than the fact that they're just absolutely lazy.
Yeah, I spent 4 years studying every single thing I could get my hands on during my faith crisis. I talked to every apologist. I talked to bishops. I talked to stake presidents. I talked to institute instructors trying to get my questions answered. And guess what? They didn't have any answers. So, but the answers I found, they just didn't agree with what the church had to say. So I'll tell you, I never studied so hard as during my faith crisis. And it always led exactly opposite of what the church said.
Yeah, so that's the lax disciples part, which is where you didn't study it out. That's the lazy learner. Then you have the lax disciple, which is where people just want to sin. So these are the old stereotypes. But Rebecca, what we know is that people don't leave the church who are lazy learners and lax disciples. They typically have very significant issues with the church theologically, and they're not just leaving to drink coffee and sin.
They do, and that you're exactly right. And there was a study, was it the 2011 study? The church leaders know why people leave. This is just something, it's dog whistling to the members. They want to hear this. Oh, they didn't study hard enough. They didn't try hard enough. I took such exception to this because at that point we were running the Good Book Club, which we still are. And I thought about the book club and I thought, there are the most brilliant, hard-working, hard-studying people in our book club. They are brilliant. And to be called that, I took huge exception to that. But again, it's a dog whistle. It makes everybody feel good. Oh, I stay because, they obviously didn't try hard enough. I'm trying really hard. Think about what happened just a few days ago where the Stick of Joseph brothers were on Mormon Stories. And what did they say to John DeLand? Oh, you haven't really read the Book of Mormon. You don't really know, is what they said. So it's this higher ground that they stand on, saying that they know more, they've learned more. And I dispute that every step of the way. None of us, nobody, I think, studies harder than somebody who is trying desperately to stay in the church and find a way to study their way back in. Most people, like Landon, eventually study their way out.
I'll just say one quick thing about this particular address. And earlier in this general conference talk, President Nelson references something from the book of Hebrews in the New Testament, but he erroneously claims that it was written by Paul when absolutely everyone knows that the book of Hebrews is not written by Paul and it's probably anonymous. So while at the same time that he's criticizing lazy learners and lax disciples, he doesn't know the fundamentals about the New Testament. I can't help but see the hypocrisy there. Now, also, Russell Nelson, January 2026, we're in the top 10 here, folks. BYU Hawaii, there's no gays in Jesus's church. And if your parents are gay, well, then you can't join my church.
The first presidency and quorum of the 12 apostles counsel together and share all the Lord has directed us to understand and to feel individually and collectively. And then we watch the Lord move upon the president of the church to proclaim the Lord's will. This prophetic process was followed in 2012 with the change in minimum age for missionaries. And again with The recent additions to the church's handbook, consequent to the legalization of same-sex marriage in some countries, filled with compassion for all, and especially for the children. We wrestled at length to understand the Lord's will in this matter, ever mindful of God's plan of salvation and of his hope for eternal life for each of his children. We considered countless permutations and combinations of possible scenarios
They talked to
that
the
could
lawyers.
arise.
They talked to the lawyers.
We met repeatedly in the temple, in fasting and prayer, and sought further direction and inspiration.
When Thomas Monson had dementia.
And then when the Lord inspired his prophet, President Thomas S. Monson,
he was out of it,
to declare the mind of the Lord and the will of the Lord, each of us during that sacred moment
bowed our head and said yes.
Felt a spiritual confirmation. It was our privilege as apostles to sustain what had been revealed to President Monson.
Excuse me, President Monson had dementia during this time. He wasn't getting any revelation from anyone unless it was how to eat more ice cream or watch What About Bob. This is one of the most cringeworthy talks of all time because he said that it's filled with compassion that we would make it so that if your parents are gay, you can't even join the church.
These are getting worse and worse. Again, I may have to tap out. This is just reprehensible, absolutely reprehensible. And again, we see when a prophet is infirm like that, not cognizant, there's a power vacuum. And what happens? November 5th happens. What happens? Handbook updates about transgender members happen. This is what they do. This is what happens when there's somebody who's at the top that's not really leading, and it's a power vacuum. And then what happened in what President Nelson is addressing there? 3 years later, yeah, not so much. Changing my mind. That was a dark, dark period that people are still recovering from.
Yeah, that was the Lord moved on President Monson, but I guess the Lord moved again really quick right afterwards, didn't he, Landon?
Yeah, that speech was actually given just 2 months after that policy was given. And I struggled with that policy. When I first heard it, I said, that can't possibly be right. And then I did a lot of research because I'm a lazy learner. And I went to my bishop and I said, I cannot accept this. This was a couple years later. I went to my bishop and I said, I cannot accept this. This is not right. And the bishop backed it up and said, I don't know either, but this is why we do it. The very next Wednesday, after he gave me all the reasons for why this was from God, they changed the policy back.
Well, it just reminds me that yesterday's prophet is today's heretic, right? That's the old saying. And number 8 here, President Nelson and COVID. You know, we have a prophet on the earth, according to the church, who can make you smarter and see around corners. And let's see what he did to help us all prepare for COVID.
My beloved brothers and sisters, as we welcome you to this historic April 2020 General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For reasons you know, I stand before you in an empty auditorium. Little did I know when I promised you at the October 2019 General Conference that this April conference would be memorable and unforgettable.
Boy, Landon, he wasn't kidding around about the little did I know part, was he?
No, he was not. And little did he know and little leadership did they provide during this. But I always look at that and I can't see those carrots or cabbage or broccoli, whatever's behind him in there. It was just, I can't
that was
look
the
at
salad
that.
bar year.
Not see
We
the
all
whole
remember that. Yeah,
that horrible salad bar behind him.
Yeah.
I missed that one. So much for Joseph seeing the 7 years of famine and then the 7 years of plenty. President Nelson can't even see a couple of days in the future, it appears like. What do you think, Rebecca?
Well, and he did make that prediction before about this conference will be like no other. So I think inside he's going, I'm glad something happened, right? Because we're still waiting for what was it a couple years ago? You will see the Lord's power unleashed, my reign. Remember that? And we're still kind of waiting to see what that is.
You mean the greatest manifestation of the Savior's power that we've ever seen?
Power. Yep, exactly.
Okay, I got it. Next up is Nelson's catchphrase, which is cringe, in my opinion. Think celestial, and the eyes. If you make sure while you're watching this that you take a careful look at his eyes, you will definitely see the Spirit of the Lord in his eyes in this particular talk.
When someone you love attacks truth, think celestial.
Gotcha.
And don't question your testimony.
Okay, sir.
The Apostle Paul prophesied that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith.
I got to jump in there for a second because that's from the Gospel of Timothy, and 7 of Paul's epistles we know Paul wrote. 6 of them are of dubious authenticity, and guess what? Timothy is one of the dubious authenticities. Rusty, you don't know your Bible, man. Give me a break. And that's where the "they shall depart from the faith" is from Timothy. He's quoting it like it's from Paul when we don't know it's from Paul. It's dubious. Give me a break.
Giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils.
Ooh.
There is no end to the adversary's deceptions.
Really?
Please be prepared.
Okay.
Never take counsel from those who do not believe.
What?
Seek guidance from voices you can trust, from prophets, seers, and revelators.
Oh.
And from the whisperings of the Holy Ghost, who will show unto you the things what ye should do.
Okay, we got the think celestial, we got the never take counsel from those who don't believe, and we got him quoting from the Epistle of Timothy and attributing it to Paul when it's actually of dubious authenticity. We got a triple whammy with this one.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that the don't take counsel is the same as the think celestial talk. And as soon as I heard those words, I knew that they would be used against people. They would be used against me. And they have been, as far as I don't have to listen to you, right? Because you're not a quote believer. I also think as soon as he said think celestial, people were like setting up my Etsy shop. Let's see doormat. Let's see mud flaps. Let's see water bottle. I guarantee it was happening right during that talk.
Well, Landon, how do you think celestial anyway? I don't really know how to do it. It's never really been explained to me.
I don't think celestial anymore. I guess I think, I don't know. I think hell. I don't know, because I don't think anyway this way anymore. I've gotten completely off the bandwagon, so they can think whatever they want. Celestials just seems to be think however I tell you to think.
That's pretty much it.
Joseph Smith in his day, to celestialize with someone had a very different meaning. So I don't know. Maybe
maybe I do think celestial.
That's right. Maybe that is what he's trying to say. I'm not sure.
I think you're talking about when Emma saw through the crack in the barn, celestializing with a certain white and delightsome maiden. I believe that is what you're referring to.
That is what I'm referring to. That's right.
Very nice. Now we have, speaking of celestial sex here, folks, we have the TK smoothie and the telestial bodies, where President Nelson brings out the idea that if you drink coffee and you don't pay tithing into the enzyme peak sham, that in the afterlife, you will not have your genitals and won't be able to have sex. No way. That can't be.
Did Russell M. Nelson just confirm a long-lost LDS doctrine that came from the days of Joseph Fielding Smith?
Your choices today will determine 3 things: where you will live throughout all eternity, the kind of body with which you will be resurrected, and those with whom you will live forever. If we unwisely choose to live telestial laws now, we are choosing to be resurrected with a telestial body.
Okay, hold up. Russell M. Nelson has just resurrected the telestial Ken doll doctrine, that those who go to the telestial kingdom do not have reproductive organs. Not only is this in direct contradiction to Alma 40:23, every limb and joint shall be restored to its body, yea, even a hair of the head shall not be lost, but all things shall be restored to their proper and perfect frame. It's also just plain weird. I'm confident that this is what he was referring to when he said
a telestial body.
But let me know what you think.
Rebecca, what's a telestial body anyway? I'm not as familiar with Mormon doctrine as you are.
Yeah, this is a really old doctrine, and people jokingly call it the telestial kingdom smoothie, meaning TK smoothie, meaning it's true. You will be resurrected in the next life without your genitalia, right? Because the church is obsessed with sex. So the worst punishment they can think of is we're just going to take all that away, all that possibility. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I was really stunned that he went there, because that's one of those weird doctrines that they just don't want people to know. Here he brought it up in 2020, whatever. Was it just last year or the year before? He brought it up again. So yeah,
Well, it was
smoothie.
Yeah, it was really brought out by Joseph Fielding Smith, and it's been almost 50 years since it's been referenced. It's one of
They
those
were hiding
doctrines that
it.
the church was trying to let go, but he seems to have doubled down on that notion. What are your thoughts on this very cringeworthy talk here, Landon?
That's what happens when you have 100-year-old leaders. They quote 50-year-old talks. And it just seems absurd that I thought gender was eternal as their new big buzzwords. That certainly doesn't sound eternal if they can take it away. So it sounds like if you're in the celestial kingdom, someone has to stand at the door while you go to the bathroom. Oh, wait,
man.
You can't go to the bathroom because you don't have any genitalia. So
No, you're escorted out. No, it's so problematic on every level.
Okay, we're down to the top 5 here, folks.
Can't
And here we
believe it.
have Russell Nelson's
Oh my gosh.
2011 legendary Flight of Death. First of all, I need you to rate this thumbnail. That is peak. That is peak DV's Mormon News Roundup thumbnail, isn't it?
That's pretty good. I have to say that's pretty good. It really captures the whole essence of that terrifying non-event.
I love this thumbnail so much here. And I've edited it. So folks here, oh my gosh, there's your jump scare. So that's to keep you on the edge of your seat
That
here.
was terrifying.
Well, this is a
Is that from
terrifying event
Congress?
here. Yes, this is a terrifying event. Now, he released a propaganda video that went along with his famous Flight of Death, where he claimed that a flight that he was on that went from Salt Lake City down to St. George encountered a number of problems. But of course, when it was fact checked, it was not a dangerous flight whatsoever. But that's not going to stop him from making it into a faith promoting story. And I put subtitles into this propaganda video, and pay careful attention to the subtitles because they do make the viewing experience a little bit more enjoyable. And I also dubbed in some other things which I think will be very entertaining for you. In November of 2011, we get Nelson's most famous retelling of this story. It was released as an inspirational message on the church's official YouTube channel. Nelson told his story once again, and the church made a video depicting the event. The title of the video is "Men's Hearts Shall Fail Them."
I was in a small airplane, and all of a sudden, the engine on the wing caught fire. It exploded, and burning oil was poured all over the right side of the airplane, and we started to dive toward the earth. We were spinning down to our death. Oh, this woman across the aisle, she was just absolutely uncontrollably hysterical. And I was calm. I was totally calm. Even though I knew I was going down to my death, I was ready to meet my maker.
Wow.
We didn't crash. We didn't die. The spiral dive extinguished the flame. The pilot got control and started the other engine up. And we made an emergency landing out in the field. But I thought through that experience, if you've got a faith, you can handle difficulties, knowing that with an eternal perspective that all will be well. In Luke 21, the earth shall be in distress, nations with perplexity, the seas and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear. What we're seeing is a prediction that in these latter days, people will be afraid. Men's hearts are failing, and that includes women.
Including women.
Because they forget their identity and their purpose.
And a prophet.
The heartaches will come.
That's for you, Landon.
Through the death of a wife and the death of a daughter. I've seen the troubles that divorce brings. Children or grandchildren go astray.
Are you feeling the spirit?
Illness, injuries. To the individual who is weak in the heart,
yes,
fearful in the heart, Be patient with yourself. Perfection comes not in this life, but in the next life.
Or
don't demand things that are unreasonable.
You mean like evidence?
But demand of yourself improvement.
Okay, get ready, folks. Hands up in a
As you
second.
let the Lord help you through that, He will make the difference.
Okay, turn it up, please. Hands up just a little bit, folks. Hands up, please. You got to feel this with me. Rebecca, please. Turn
I'm
up the
so
music.
grateful for the gospel of Jesus Christ.
We're almost
that
there.
allows me that kind of strength in these tumultuous times.
Yes. Okay, is that a peak cringe video or what, folks?
Absolutely. Yeah, we know that didn't happen because the atheist on board would have trampled him trying to get off.
I was just going to say that. The Brad Wilcox is atheist on there, stomping everybody around. So, you know what I think, though, is that scared atheist idea. I have found exactly the opposite. I was really nervous about death or anything like that when I was in the church. It seemed terrifying, horrible, really just not, you're going to be judged. Who knows what kingdom you're going to go to? You're going to lose your genitalia. You have to say words, signs, tokens. Now, peace. And I have to say, I've gone through the death of my mom and my dad in the last 4 months, and it has been a very peaceful experience, even as an atheist.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Wish you the very best on that. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed my subtitles there that went along with that. I have a long video that I'm going to be releasing on Rusty's famous flight of death here coming up shortly. We've only got 4 left to go here. We're going to take you out of here. We're going a little long here, but here, this is a talk over here, folks. This is Joseph Wirthlin in 2007 here. He's just so old, and President Nelson is behind him, but this is just, can't we just let Joseph Wirthlin go home? He doesn't look like he's up to the challenge, guys. I mean, I don't want to mock anybody, but that's not how you do it. You know what I'm saying? Man, it's tough to watch these. You see, he's behind. Rusty's helping him out, but I just wish that they would let Wirthlin go home to his family. I personally see that as peak cringe, but maybe I'm at the wrong crowd. Okay, last 3 here. Well, these will take us out on a little bit of a higher note. Russell Ballard put on a little lipstick. I missed it on this one. Let's
I just simply say to you, brethren, wake up. Open your eyes and look around a little. And you beautiful girls.
Whoa.
Don't wander around looking like men.
Like men?
Put on a little lipstick now and then and look a little charming.
Little lipstick?
It's that simple.
Really?
I don't know why we make this whole process so hard.
Rebecca, it's just pretty simple. You know, those women out there, they need to put on a little lipstick, and all the men have to do, and this is the part that most people don't realize, all the men have to do is just look around. It's kind of like a buffet out there.
Yeah, we did a podcast on that too. Exactly. Just look around. But what's interesting is all those giggling, tittering voices of women, and they don't realize what is the ratio. It's about, help me, I can't remember what the ratio is. It's like 3 to, anyway, there's a lot more women than there are men in the church who are looking for that eternal companion. So it's really nothing to laugh about. And I don't know if lipstick will help.
Yeah. And of course, also women don't look like men because men have to be manly men and women have to be feminine women. We got to reinforce the gender stereotypes, don't we, Landon?
Yeah, I was surprised he didn't say, young men, you need to put on a little deodorant.
That's what you would have said.
I'm on board with that. I'm on board with that advice. Yeah.
That's what Landon would have said. Okay. We're down to number 2 here. Richard Scott, abuse victims need to repent.
Adversity, even when caused willfully by others' unrestrained appetite, can be a source of growth when viewed from the perspective of eternal principle.
What?
The victim must do all in his or her power to stop the abuse. Most often, the victim is innocent because of being disabled by fear or the power or authority of the offender.
Most often.
At some point in time, however, the Lord may prompt a victim to recognize a degree of responsibility for abuse.
Responsibility?
The priesthood leader will help you assess your responsibility so that if needed, it can be addressed.
What?
Otherwise, the seeds of guilt will remain and sprout into bitter fruit. Yet no matter what degree of responsibility, from absolutely none to increasing consent, the healing power of the atonement of Jesus Christ can provide a complete cure. Forgiveness can be obtained for all involved in abuse.
Rebecca, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, so you're supposed to go to your untrained clergy, who's your plumber down the street, and plead your case about how culpable you are in a scenario where you are being assaulted. And he's going to ask you, well, did you struggle? Did you fight back? Did you say yes? Were you somewhere where you weren't supposed to be? Had you taken some alcohol? Were you impaired? All of those things mean it's your fault, and you have to ask for forgiveness. This is a horrible, horrible talk. Extraordinarily damaging and extremely ignorant on his part, as far as he does not even know what he's talking about when it comes to assault or how people react in a scenario like that.
But Landon, don't worry. Jesus is going to make it all better, right?
Yeah, evidently the victim is to call upon their bishop and the Lord, while the abuser is to call upon Kurt McConkie.
Oh my gosh.
That's a sad fact. And here is the number one. Since it is President Nelson's 100-year birthday, we're going to go back to a flashback to when he was 95. And I literally think that this may be the most cringeworthy out of all 50 here. But here's the number one: wishing President Nelson a happy 100-year birthday special, and maybe another 100. Who knows? He is the prophet after all.
Did you know that Russell M. Nelson had his 95th birthday party in the conference center?
Yes. Nice. Ooh. Yeah.
Our hearts have been drawn toward our Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
We are so grateful that President Russell Marion Nelson is called to be his living prophet on the earth today.
Oh.
Happy birthday, President Nelson.
Happy birthday.
Is this an appropriate use of tithepayers' money? Is this prophet worship? Let me know what you think in the comments.
What do you guys think about the 95th birthday party? What do you think about that one?
It's happy birthday, dear leader. That's all I can say. And I was just, Landon and I were talking about this. Can you think of any other prophet that had a birthday like that?
Yeah, I remember President Hinckley had a birthday, but it wasn't quite as extravagant as that one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this man takes birthday parties to a new height. It's like, oh, my birthday's coming up. Do something, everyone. That seems to be just ridiculous. What really impressed me is I didn't know Nemo had been covering this stuff for 5 years. So well done, Nemo.
Nemo's been out there. Are you kidding?
He's been there a long time.
Yeah.
And that does take us. That was the number one, guys. What was the most cringeworthy moment? We can start with you, Rebecca. There was a lot to choose from, but what is the number one most cringeworthy moment that I put together in the top 50? Can you think back? And the question will go to you next, Landon. What do you think?
You know, cringeworthy is so subjective because some things were funny, cringe. Other things were so disturbing, they made me want to cry. So it's hard to kind of put those in the same category. I have to say the one that just really bothers me the most is Brad Wilcox and his atheists stomping on people when there's a disaster, because I really take exception to that. But all of these 50, they all can stand alone. They're all good. But if I have to pick one, the one that just makes me so mad, it has to be that one probably.
Okay, Landon, what about you?
I'm going to say the press conference at the National Press Conference.
David Bednar at the National Press
Yes, when Bednar went to the National Press
Okay.
Conference and tried to answer questions about the church's wealth and said, millions instead of billions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
Oh,
that's
so you
one I'm
picked one that wasn't in these 50.
Okay, so
you
that's
picked
one that I
both of us
missed.
Oh, he
were
said,
going,
what did I
"What?"
miss? So I was
Okay.
going with one that I didn't see in there.
Oh, okay. I got you. This I did
Okay.
neglect to. David Bednar did appear, but yes, the National Press Club briefing back in, I believe it was May of 2022. Yeah, there was some cringeworthy moments there, to be sure. My personal most cringeworthy moment out of all of them is Jeff Holland in the MTC. That was a highly disturbing leaked video. And far from people out there saying that Jeff Holland is an empathetic and loving leader, he uses fear-mongering to control his flock, which is reprehensible. Guys, we did it. This is, hey, deleted scenes. Hey, you guys remember when that happened?
Yeah.
Yes, that was so fun.
On my patio.
That's right.
Yeah, I put the balloons in there for the birthday party. I think we did a pretty good job with summing this all up, don't you think? I did fix the video there. This is two Mormon podcasting legends and their understudy. You know, someday, guys, I will reach those vaunted heights of the Mormonish podcast. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like if I remember that visit correctly to Mormonish Studio North, you were trying to help us learn to use StreamYard. So who's the understudy now, right? No, you're amazing. And we're really happy that we got to collaborate on this. I hope that people will now go practice some self-care, maybe cake or something, because a lot of these were really hard to watch. But it's important, I think, to put these things all in perspective and go through them. So, and I guess I'll throw out just at the end your final slide, and I'll ask our audience who's watching, what did you think was the most cringiest moment? And like Landon answered, what did we miss? We know there are things that we missed, but we can't go on all night. So thank you, Landon, for co-hosting. And thank you, Devise from Mormon News Roundup, an amazing show, for putting this all together for us. It was incredible. Please comment and let us know what you thought about all these moments and everything we talked about. And please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast and Mormon News Roundup. And if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit the notification bell on Mormonish or Mormon News Roundup. You can always donate to either of our podcasts. We on Mormonish have links in our show notes to Donor Box. We're a 501(c)(3), and we absolutely appreciate all of you that do. And I know that Mormon News Roundup has an amazing Patreon that you can get all the really good stuff. So check that out for sure. Also, merch store on Mormonish. We have all kinds of fun merch that's also in our show notes. And again, we'll just say good night, everybody, and happy birthday week to President Nelson. And we will see you on next time on Mormonish Podcast and the Mormon News Roundup. Bye, everybody. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Landon. Thank you, Devay.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday